Welcome back. Now, a documentary aimed at recording the history of Cape Town townships, including Gugulethu, Manenberg and Langa, is currently being launched in Gugulethu this afternoon. The brainchild of the Heritage Education and Research Project, the first volume titled Going Down Memory Lane, looks at the history of community facilities such as community centers, halls and stadiums, which are or were used as hubs of activities for sports, arts and culture. Let's now cross live to our reporter, Vanessa Poonah, who is currently tracking the story for us. So, Vanessa, what a great initiative, going down memory lane. Take us down memory lane.
Alicia, good afternoon to you. Yes, indeed, a very important project in terms of recording the history of communities such as Gugulethu, Langa, as well as Nyanga. Here on the Cape Flats of Cape Town, of course, you'll know we've heard some speakers just now talking about how these community centres, these facilities were a sort of hub during the 50s, the 60s and the 70s, a place where young children, where the youth could come and learn skills, including sporting skills, karate lessons, where children could come together and where they learned things like discipline. And of course, that's what this documentary is about, is recording that history of how integral these community centres and facilities were in raising children, I suppose, and also building strong communities. Of course, you've said it there just now, it's the brainchild of the Heritage Education and Research Project. This, of course, very interestingly, this project launched 2 years ago. And to join me now for more information on how this came about and how they've decided on this specific project is the chairperson of the project, Mr. Whitey Jacobs. Sir, very warm good day to you. Of course, we just heard just now, if you can join me over here, we just heard just now, and we've seen some snippets of what exactly this first volume of the documentary is all about. Let's take a step back. Where did your project come from? When was it launched? And what was the aim of the Heritage Education and Research Project?
Let me start by saying the reason why we started this conversation was after the tragedy of an 82-year-old woman who was killed in her own home, and we struggled to find a place to bury that woman whilst she was staying closer to one of the community recreational centers. We had to go and bury her in New Cross Road, and then the discussion started about the usage of facilities currently, how those facilities we used currently and how we used to use those facilities. And we thought that it is important that in order also to see ways of changing the thinking of young people, is to record the history of these facilities, not only the community centers but also our stadiums, and record the people that have participated in this and who are developed by this. Some of them are national icon, of course, but some of them are people that are contributing differently in the society.
You've spoken, and I think your colleague Jeff spoke early on about you cannot find someone, whether it's in industry, whether it's in sport, whether it's in arts and culture, that come from the townships that don't have a story about where their roots started at these community centres. Tell us a bit about this project, this specific video that you've shown us just now. How does that link into the stories of so many South Africans that hail from the townships, that have the community centres at heart?
Yes, because it's their own. Look what we are doing. This is a documentary. We are recording the memories and the history of the people that have participated in these facilities differently. The purpose of that recording is to take that recording to young people and say to young people, these are the people that are developed by these centers. These are their contribution, because some of them continue to do contribution in different communities. An example is karate. You find the people who came from one of our centers, Lukanyisweni, who graduated and become black belts, third dans, etc. They are plowing back in different communities, such as Mfuleni, Yesterifir, Khayelitsha, and Delft. So we're saying these people, once they've graduated in Lukanyisweni, are plowing back in other communities. But the other part of it, which is so important, is the fact that you can't talk of Langa without talking of Athlone Bondival, because there's been a link between those communities. You can't talk of Gugulethu without talking of Manenberg, Heiderveld. So because there's been a link with those communities also. And what it then does, it helps building or strengthening the non-racial culture that used to exist in the Cape Flats areas. That non-racial culture is slowly diminishing, but it's trying to build it back and bring it together.
So, of course, today we see the launch of Volume 1. What does Volume 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 hold in for us?
Yeah. Volume 2, we'll start Volume 2 sometime next year, depending on fund, of course. The focus on Volume 2 is really on youth now. It's to say to youth, this is Volume 1, this is what you have learned from Volume 1. What are you currently doing? What is it that the youth is currently doing in these facilities that is different from what the older generation used to do in these facilities? How do we then begin? It's going to be some kind of a debate. How do we then improve the usage of these facilities for the benefit of communities? That's how Volume 2 is going to focus on that. However, Volume 2 will have a strong component of non-racialism, which will look at Manenberg, Heiderveld, and see how those facilities relate to the facilities in the African townships.
Mr. Jacobs, thank you so much for your time today. So, of course, Whitey Jacobs, he's the chairperson of the Heritage Education and Research Project. And, of course, behind me, we've just seen the first volume going down memory lane, a documentary on these various facilities within townships in Cape Town being launched here at the Ikwezi Community Centre in Gugulethu.
Thank you so much to SABC News reporter there, Vanessa Poonah, joining us live from Cape Town.